Hi, Hakan. How are you? You're muted. You're muted.
You know, every day, at least 3 meetings, and I really very bored from Zoom,
Yes.
from Teams,
Yes.
from Skype. It's
Yes.
crazy.
It's crazy.
Like-
Exactly. I was going to ask you, do we have the bios of Ricardo and Diego?
I have asked, but I didn't have it.
Okay, well, I don't know Ricardo very well. So if you could do Ricardo, I know Diego quite well. So
Perfect. Perfect.
Hello, here is Ricardo.
Hello, Ricardo.
Hello,
how are you?
Very well.
Perfect. Attila. We see Attila twice in today, in different meeting from Croatia.
Yeah.
Ricardo, I see you, but your name is written different, actually.
Sorry?
Your name looks
Yeah.
Metehan Samet Gül, actually. There is.
I don't understand wwhy this
I
why
also.
this happened. But it's in fact it's me.
Metehan, if you hear me, do you know the reason why we see your name in front of Ricardo?
It's probably because of the link we have sent to Dr. Ricardo.
Okay. So Ricardo is in your link. Okay, now of course we know Metehan is actually Ricardo.
Yes, I think that no problem. It's all right. So good night for everybody. Here for Mozambique is already 8 o'clock, 18 here in Mozambique.
Oh, hello.
Yolanda, my wife.
Yolanda, good to
It's a
see you. How
pleasure
are
to
you?
meet you. Fine, thank you. It's a pleasure to meet you again.
It is our pleasure to see you.
Mandaste o link para a coisa? Rodolfo?
Actually, also I discovered that Metehan. Okay. Now it's okay. Now the names are coming. Okay, good.
It's okay now.
It's okay now. Thank you, Metehan.
Qual é o link?
Now we are on time, Chris. If you wish, we can start.
Who is going to begin?
Yeah, Chris, are we going to start now? You don't hear me. Ricardo, do you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Okay, Chris, probably you have a problem. By the way, Chris, you are muted.
can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect. We can hear you.
Perfect.
Okay, we can start.
So do you want me to start?
No, actually, now for the beginning, usually the president of ICOMOS Underwater Cultural Heritage Committee, Chris Underwood,
Okay.
has to start. Okay, Chris, you may start.
Thank you, Hakan. Hello, everybody. Good day, wherever you are. For us, it's midday, more or less, but I know some people are from the future and some people are in the past. A very big welcome. We're month by month, we're ticking off our webinars. Want to remind everybody that Hakan's idea to support the UNESCO Convention through webinars has now been going, I think it's the 7th month, which is quite astonishing. And I think we've still got 6 or 7 months to go. So we are at the halfway point, I believe. For some of you, you'll have been at all of them, and they've been an outstanding collection of presentations spanning many different types of heritage, underwater cultural heritage. And I'm sure today our two speakers, Diego Carabias and Ricardo Duarte, are just going to add to that scope and the depth and the breadth of underwater cultural heritage represented by ICOMOS members. I'm going to introduce Diego. I've known Diego for many years now, both personally and professionally. I've had the joy of working with him in Valparaiso on a harbour project threatened by the excavation by dredging, which has uncovered a treasure, a literal treasure trove of information and artifacts which have been under the terrific management and control by Diego. I look forward to his talk. Hopefully there will be a chance for a question or two. Diego, I'm going to give you the floor, and you can tell us what you've been up to.
Yes, many thanks, Chris, for this introduction. May I share my screen?
Of course. We can see this, well, I can see your screen, Diego. Perfect.
Okay.
I think you need to go to the top left of the screen. That's it. Perfect.
No, that's it. I'm afraid I can't see my notes, Chris, but that's okay.
Okay.
Okay. So very briefly, many thanks once again for having us here today. We're very excited to be able to talk about our research for the last 20 years in Valparaiso. So Valparaiso, it's one of the main seaports in central coast of Chile. And the interesting thing is that it rapidly evolved from being second category seaport during colonial times to rapidly transform into one of the largest entrepot, one of the largest commercial centers in the Southeastern Pacific during the early Republican period, within a connected maritime global network. At the same time, Valparaiso, due to its structural characteristics, is a very open bay exposed to this periodic northern gale events that are very common during winter times. it's characterized by a very high frequency of shipping casualties. So more than 300 wreck events are recorded by the historical accounts and documentary sources. This is a very continuous feature during the historic period, during, of course, early 19th century and up to the 20th century, and of course, until now. So this is why I entitled the presentation exploring a modern harbor and its maritime cultural landscape. So this is the configuration of Valparaiso at current. The waterfront has been kind of heavily transformed due to mainly anthropic activities, and the whole waterfront has changed dramatically, specifically from the second half of the 19th century up to the first 20 years of the 20th century, when a large breakwater was built. So this is a bit of a synthesis of what we have been doing during the last 20 years. Through remote sensing and diver-based operations, we have been able to successfully identify nearly 80 wrecks located within the harbor or very close to the harbor, which spans basically the 19th century primarily, and the first decades of the 20th century. This is a very vast array of different types of wreck sites, from very large sailing ships like clippers and windjammers, very characteristics of the 19th century, to large steamships, which are basically the dominant type of wreck sites during the first decades of the 20th century. So, for example, this is just a brief overview of the kind of information they are contributing to in order to gain a better understanding of what a maritime cultural landscape can be and how it is constructed over time and evolves. For instance, the bark infatigable, which has been investigated for more than something like 15 years now. It was a Chilean Navy ship lost due to an accidental fire in 1825. And since then, it has been thoroughly studied. For example, we know a lot of information which is basically poorly documented in the historical sources about life conditions on board of a Chilean mid-19th century, the kind of problems experienced by the ship complements, the habits of alcoholism, the use of tobacco, the dominant tableware were completely dominated by Staffordshire ceramics. So it's the archaeological record, which is in turn giving this insight into completely hitherto unknown aspects of our Chilean Navy, and what anthropologists and historical economists would call the allure of the foreign. All the material culture is basically dominated by European and US-made imported goods. So this would be more or less the configuration of the port at the time, in the mid-9th century. So basically the naval anchorage was about 250 meters from the shoreline of the time. And this is how the site is located right now. It is close to berth number 3, And all this transformation, evolution of the waterfront has caused that the site is now virtually something like 40 meters from the berths of terminal number 1. Another interesting case is the fiscal mall, which was built at the end of the 19th century by the Chilean state. Lots of European, basically British design and French engineers participating in the largest investment project in order to modernize the harbor facilities. And well, during a dredging project in 2011, we were able not only to relocate the remains of the fiscal mall, but at the same time, we found a large refuse site that give us an interesting insight about the basically steam shipping lines that were traveling from the Northern Europe, basically Great Britain to Chile from the second half of the 19th century. So we got a lot of presence of the Pacific Steam Navigation Company, which was the largest and most powerful shipping line of the time. A lot of larger material culture assemblage, a vast array of imported goods, beverages and containers and food containers. Lots of Staffordshire ceramics. We have been able to study the Pacific Steam Navigation Company actually transformed over time its tableware and adapted the designs and institutional and corporate tableware. Another interesting example is the connection between the nitrate trade during the second half of the 19th century and Valparaiso. The nitrate trade is very well known for the connection between Northern Europe and the northern ports of Chile. Then you see all these windjammers, iron and steel hull windjammers moored in Valparaiso. For example, you got this German Flying P company, the Lates company, which was specialized in the nitrate trade. And you have here a cousin of the Potsdam. We don't have a photograph of the Potsdam. Potsdam was steel hard bark. It was accidentally lost during the Civil War of 1891 at the entrance of Valparaiso. And this wreck site is interesting because it provides an insight about the vast array of imported goods that were entering Valparaiso at the end of the 19th century, from construction materials like cement barrels, you can see in the picture, a lot of consumer goods, beverages, and tableware, and even toys for children. All these imported goods were entering Chile, particularly Valparaiso. The ships would call here in Valparaiso and then proceed to the north. Another important aspect is, for example, the loss of the SS Arequipa, which was part of the PSNC, Pacific Steam Navigation Company. This is the worst tragedy in the story of Valparaiso, with more than 100 casualties during a very strong gale in 1903. And that's the sonograph, or the side scan sonar image of the Arequipa, which was actually found by our team in 2015, which is located in something like 53 meters deep at the entrance of the bay. And then you have other cases like Concepcion, as I said, this very large steamers, more than 100-meter long steamers from the first decades of the 20th century. So we also have been able to do a lot of public outreach. For example, in 2013, we were able to organize this archaeological exhibition with the collaboration of the a UNESCO Secretariat office in Paris with something like 7,500 visitors in something like 4 months. Then in 2016, we were able, with a Natural Museum History of Valparaiso and El Pacífico Sur and other partners, we were able to actually organize this Bajo las Aguas del Puertos exhibition, which reported something like 85,000 visitors in a period of something like 4 months. Public outreach has also been strongly promoted with the Chilean Navy. And for example, we got this national campaign level public outreach initiative, which has been very important because at the time well, important aspect is that Chile has not ratified the UNESCO 2001 convention. And at the time, Chilean Navy was one of the strong opponents of Chile signing the convention. So it's important because there's been a very positive and in this sense, very relevant improvement in terms of the importance of promoting the protection by part of some of the Chilean society and some of the important actors. One of them is the Chilean Navy. So, as Chris said, we've known each other for a long time, and here you can see Chris giving one of the first NAS courses back in 2008. And Valparaiso has been partly the place where these courses and all this training, academic training, and academic courses have developed. So this is important. We believe that basically Valparaiso, and in particular underwater cultural heritage, can be transformed into an engine of sustainable development. But in order to get this going, we need more funding. We need this to be an important trademark, of Valparaiso, which at the same time is considered one of the sites of the World Heritage List. So this is basically. I would be very happy to answer any questions if you do have some. Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Hakan.
Thank you, Diego. Hakan, shall we transform to Ricardo straight away, or is there time for a question or two?
Actually, we have time for the questions, and they can ask. We have 5 minutes for Diego.
Okay. If anybody's got any question, can they put them in the chat for Diego, please? All I'm seeing is congratulations, great work, Diego, thanks. And I'll add mine to that. I know that I was there quite a few years ago now, and I can see how the whole maritime landscape of Valparaiso has just exploded into a compilation of so many different aspects of shipping and trade. And I think no questions. Okay, maybe some questions will come at the end of the presentation by Ricardo. Hakan, do you want to take control and
yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you, dear colleague, for a very nice presentation. I'm going to talk on Dr. Ricardo Duarte. He is one of the distinguished members of ICOMOS ICUCH. He and his wife, Yolanda, are working in the field of underwater archaeology in Mozambique Island. They have very nice archaeology research center based in a castle of Mozambique Island. Both of them came to Antalya several years ago to one of our scientific symposium and present an excellent presentation. And it is great pleasure and honor to see him between us. Yes, Ricardo.
Okay, thank you. I can share my
Please.
screen. Can you see?
Yes, we see.
So Mozambique Island is a small island in the northern coast of Mozambique. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and the island is in a bay, extensive bay surrounded by, and is surrounded by very important historical wrecks from different epochs that document its role, the role of this small island as an important port in East Africa and the Indian Ocean since the first millennium. Sorry? Hello?
Keep going.
Yeah. For to take care of the sites and protect and study, we have organized a center, Center for Study and Protection of Underwater Heritage of Mozambique Island. And this is, the center is in the huge fortress, late 16th century building, very important with architecture of Renaissance Italian influence. The center here is an image of the small center that we have inaugurated 3 years ago. Here is inside one of the barracks of the fortress. We have a small lab and a place for work, and we try to mobilize the Mozambican archaeologists and the local community in preserving this heritage. There was a lot of wrecks around the island. We have already located around 23 wrecks of different epochs. And I cannot speak of all the wrecks and present all the wrecks, but I have shown some 3 wrecks that are significant of the different periods of the history of the island. I begin with this one, the number 16 wreck. This is a photogrammetry of the wreck taken last year. And this is the 20 meters down. This is a fantastic thing because it's one of the few examples of Indian Ocean ship, maybe a big dhow or that was used to sail from here to all along the East African coast, Arabia, India, and even far away to Indonesia and China. In this image, we make a presentation of the different ships of the Indian Ocean that used to sail along East African coast. This is presented by our colleague, historian Sharif, and we feed different kind of boats used to sail along the Indian Ocean, East African coast. Some of them are already extinct, and maybe this dhow can be one of these ships. We have not yet begun the study of this ship. These ships they used to sail since the first millennium in an extensive trade network all over the Indian Ocean. This is the largest interoceanic trade continue in the world. And this map, you can see some evidence of this trade in the first millennium provided by discovery of Chinese Tang ceramics and also copies, Abbasid copies, the so-called opaque glazed ceramic that was used to be traded on the 10th century all over the Indian Ocean. One of the most fantastic collection of this pottery was on the famous wreck of Belitung in Indonesia. That is the oldest evidence of Indian Ocean vessel, maybe from Arabia or India, that was wrecked in Belitung in Indonesia, and unfortunately was destroyed by treasure hunter activity. But there is also evidence of this ceramics tang and in other parts of the Indian Ocean, and this was so famous, so it was an item of trade, so important item of trade that it was being also imitated in Middle East, in the ancient what is today Iran, Iraq was Sassanid Persia, and after the Abbasid Caliphate produced large amounts of this pottery, these ceramics, and this evidence of trade all over the coast. And here we have evidence of this pottery discovered last year in the excavations in the small island of Mozambique, showing evidence of the extensive trade going on in around the 9th, 10th century up to Mozambique and even the southern part of the country. Together with this opaque glazed pottery from the Middle East, we find also in these excavations on land in Mozambique Island evidence of local ceramics from Kilwa, an East African important medieval town. And as you can see here, images of these fantastic towns that are asserted to the Swahili, so-called Swahili civilization along East Africa. That was an important element on the Indian Ocean urban development. Together with this was also local ceramics, Lumbo tradition, that are evident also in these medieval ruins near Mozambique Island. This is pre-colonial urban development in monumental architecture, 100 kilometers far from the island. It's an important harbor of the 10th century. These are the Metep extinct boat. This is the boat that uses to travel all along, to sail along the East African coast. It's a square rigged sail, a mat sail, sewn planks, incredible boat. It was extinct in the beginning of the 20th century. The last ones have sailed between Zanzibar and Lamu. And maybe that wreck, that wreck that we have now in Mozambique, maybe we are going to begin studying the wreck, and maybe is one of these Metepes. If it is, it will be the first evidence, the first remains of a wreck of Dao Metep. It was around 50 tons boat, more or less around that, used to carry wood, mangrove wood along East Africa and other items. Another wreck that I have chosen to show you is this number 2. This is very important. This is one of the few remains of 16th century Indian carrier Portuguese galleon. These are very few examples of these wrecks, maybe 3 or 4 in the world. Recently was one discovered in the mouth of the Tagus River, and these are very unknown boats. There are some illustrations like this one, contemporary illustrations, but there was no plans, nothing that can give the exact description of this naval architecture linked to these fantastic boats that make for the first time the sail from Europe to Asia through the contouring the cape of the southern tip of Africa. This is these Portuguese boats is incredible because they used to carry, as you can see here on this image, this is the Spadart ship may be described in the book the Luís Duarte de Abreu, Book of the Armadas, a 16th century book that described the armadas that left Portugal to India. And this speaks about this Spadart ship that you see here, representation on the right. And maybe is this one the ship that was wrecked and we have now here in Mozambique Island, very near the fortress. And these ships, they used to be in the sails, the cross of Christ. This is the cross representing the order of Christ that follows the order of the Templars in Portugal, and that it was the main source for financing the Portuguese discoveries. We can see the same cross in the small church. This is very important, and I speak about this because this is to emphasize the important link between underwater cultural heritage and heritage on land. And this is a small church. And as you can see on the right side of this image, there is showing the wreck there, and also the small church 500 meters far on the near the fortress. And you see on this roof of this chapel, this church, the order of Christ. And this is contemporary of the wreck. This small church is contemporary of the wreck, and it's very, very interesting because this is this small chapel is a Gothic monument. It's the very few Gothic monuments outside Europe, and it's incredible because it's in the southern part of Africa. This is this small 16th century church with the Gothic vault and this cross of the order of Christ. That brings the link of the Portuguese discoveries with this order, and that was organized, followed the extinction of the Templars. This is the vault of the contemporary monument in Portugal, the Jerônimos, that was built by King Dom Manuel, that was the king that initiated this route to India through the Cape. And in this same chapel, we see this symbol on the entrance that is the coat of arms of Dom Manuel. And the same coat of arms you can see here in the right side on this incredible bronze cannon that is there on the wreck. So this is the link between land heritage and underwater heritage. And I think it's very important to consider this integrity of this heritage. This is a recent discovery in the Tagus River also of one of the galleons of this period. And as I told you before, these are very, very few. So it's very important to preserve and study these remains. The wreck was spoiled by treasure hunters, and the hull was exposed at that time. And now, after this work of the treasure hunters spoiling that wreck was in 2000, 2002, but now we have find that is still there, the most of this hull. So it's still buried there and covered by sediments and ballast stones. So it's still possible to study and to divulgate and study once more this fantastic hull of this galleon, unique testimony in the world. The cargo of this galleon was mainly, one of the main components of the cargo of this galleon was 2,000 objects of Ming 16th century porcelain. And they have been, so the most of the collection has been recovered by the treasure hunter that spoiled the wreck and sold in Christie's in Amsterdam. And one part of the collection was left, mainly constituted of broken objects of the collection. It was said that this collection was sold. It was a fantastic collection that was on the way to Europe because European aristocracies in the 16th century were very interested and avid of the Chinese porcelain. There is this recent book that about the Chinese porcelain interest in Habsburg, Spain, in the end of the 16th century, exactly the time when this ship was wrecked. And at that time, Philip II of Spain, Habsburg king, was also the king of Portugal. And is known the important collection of the Habsburgs constituted by more than 3,000 pieces of Ming porcelain. And this is also a very interesting thing. This is the end of the 17th century decorating the room of the 17th century nobleman palace in Lisbon, the Palace of Santos. And this shows this palace was built by King Dom Manuel in the 16th century. And this is incredible because shows the impact of the interest by Ming porcelain in Europe at the time. So this is to show that this heritage is fantastic because from this small island we can go to this global perception of the trade at the time. And here is another record, the O3 that I also have chosen to speak a bit about this heritage. This is a 17th century, beginning of the 17th century wreck, Nossa Senhora da Consolação. He was shipwrecked during the Third Dutch siege of the Mozambique Island in the beginning of the 17th century. And this is another wreck that was spoiled, and you can see by these images the importance of this. Also a very well-preserved structure of the hull, jars, lead ingots, and an incredible collection that was also exposed and spoiled by treasure hunters. They left the site in these conditions, as you can see here, and you noticed this around 4 years ago with exposed wood and exposed hull and cannons. It was, this image showed that they excavated more than 2 meters of sediments that was covering and preserving this wreck for centuries. And they exposed also this hull. This is beginning of the 17th century, also European, Portuguese Indian Ocean galleon. A galleon sailing in the Indian Ocean in the 16th century with Portuguese flag. And this is also an incredible hull. And the collection that we have some images that have been left by this treasure hunter company that show the diversity of the cargo of this vessel, with objects from several regions of the Indian Ocean, so from places such as Burma, China, and India, that shows the trade that was going on. And this was a Portuguese vessel, but was inserted in the Indian Ocean trade, because when the Portuguese begin sailing in the Indian Ocean, they have not disrupted the Indian Ocean trade. They have integrated themselves on that trade, and they begin making trade among the different urban centers of these countries, of this ocean. As I told you before, the hull was left exposed, and we have made an effort to preserve this important remain. We have begun monitoring the evolution of the degradation of the hull through photogrammetry. This is 3 consecutive years of photogrammetry that show us that the degradation was going on very fast. So we have also studied, my colleague, Mozambican archaeologist Cesar Mauman, also began studying the physical threats of this wreck. And we have made from this wreck an experimental, it was so exposed in so sensitive situation that we have decided to not only to protect the wreck, but only make from this a field of experience of ways to preserve this remains that exposed by treasure hunters. And this is some studies we have made on the threats that have been affecting the wreck, also biological threats. We have tried to study the different threats, and this colleague Cesar is now preparing this master degree on this. And we have decided to experiment covering the wreck with a fabric geotextile, and because we have think about maybe the possibility to save the wreck. So we have been working on that. And now the site is protected since 3 years with the geotextile fabric, and is working well. This intervention is, of course, of an experimental nature, but with somewhat unpredictable long-term results. But since 3 years, the results seem positive so far. In any case, it's something to evaluate and on this intervention that we are doing. But what I have to tell is that it's not easy, it's expensive, all this is experimental, and in fact, it's very, very bad to expose these treasures, this heritage, and that it gives a big problem for the protection of this. Another wreck, I am going to travel in the time some centuries. I go to the 18th century. This is, I'm showing here a remain of a ship that is very important because it's a slave ship. It's one of the most famous ships in the world, the Aurora. And the Aurora was wrecked here in Mozambique Island following uprising of slaves on board on the 18th century. It was a very known French slavery that uses to carry slaves to the French islands of the Indian Ocean and also to America. This is a team from the Slave Wreck Project working with us to study this wreck. We have been able to locate. It was difficult to locate the wreck, but now we are almost sure that this is this wreck, the Aurora, and there's some objects from the Aurora being studied in our small laboratory in Cairim. This is Dermil Duchamp, our conservator of our laboratory, and this collection is incredibly important. This is in very bad shape, but is the the remains, these remains that you see here are the only collection, I think is the only collection of muzzle load guns from a wreck. And this is not only important for study, this is important for divulgation, because the fact that this wreck, the Aurora, was wrecked follow a slave uprising on board. This maybe have been the guns that have been used to suppress that slave rebellion, and this will have an enormous meaning in a future exhibition that will have the exhibition with the remains of this ship. We have been able to reconstruct the location of the ship through a description of an ancient document from Mozambique Island, because the boat was coming, was linked to Mauritius shipowner, and we have constant description, the currents and winds. We have been able to locate the place of the ship, and it was not easy to locate. We have been doing extensive magnetometer survey, diving during 2 or 3 years until being able to locate this ship, the Aurora. So thank you very much for your attention. Is some insight on the heritage of this place. And we are carrying on studying and protecting, and anybody that want to come here to work with us, to support, to participate is welcome, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ricardo, for this excellent presentation, and especially geotextile experience is very important, very nice, and it's good to know that you have a good result from them. And by the way, we know one more Ming Dynasty porcelain wreck in Eastern Mediterranean near Cyprus, and unfortunately, some of the cargo already smuggled by treasure hunters too. It is now a case in ICUC and UNESCO, by the way. Okay, I guess we have some questions to Ricardo. You can write or you can ask directly, dear colleagues.
Hakan, I saw Mina asked about what was protecting, what legislation was protecting these wrecks. She says, how is the legislation protecting these incredible wrecks? That's a question for Ricardo.
Yeah,
yes,
Ricardo.
Mozambique has a legislation that protects the wrecks. The legislation, in fact, is good, but the problem is that the legislation is not working. You know, that is the main problem, because now this treasure hunting activity has finished, because it was very active around the island. But now we have managed, with support of UNESCO and with support of some friends, academics, institutions, and we have been able to convince the government to stop this commercial activity, because in the past there was the idea that it was feasible to sell part of the cargo to pay the excavations and to give permissions to these commercial companies, for me, treasure hunters, that it was feasible to give them permissions and to allow them to pillage the wrecks, because they come with proposals of archaeological cover, and they convince the authorities to give them licenses, and this, you know, when when this goes through the official channels, there is all sort of interpretation of the law, and it is very difficult, very difficult. We, Mozambican archaeologists, academics, we have been fighting against this, telling that don't do that, that will only bring spoil of the heritage, even from the economical point of view, will not bring any result. But it was difficult to make them understand. But finally, after some years of fighting and battling, and also with ICUS support, this Marvel give us a lot of support, and ICUS have give support to UNESCO, to us, and with the Mozambique Island community, we managed to convince to stop this commercial activity, and now we are protecting the wrecks. But I think that these ideas of making money with the heritage and these ideas of the treasures underwater, they may return back. And I think one of the important things is to disseminate to the ratifications of the convention, to make this more difficult that these programs with commercial component through underwater heritage make it more difficult and impossible that this return, but because this is something that is not going on now anymore in Mozambique Island. It can return, but it's going on in Indonesia, in Asia, in the other parts of the world. They are still doing this, and this is the most catastrophic thing for the underwater heritage. This is my presentation. I have tried to emphasize the danger and the problem of this approach. And this is, I show you unique testimonies in the world. This remains of this Portuguese galleon is unique. And this spoil is something that must be finished, and we must fight and hard and for the convention. It's something that sometimes I think why the convention is not also ratified by the most of the developed countries from where these treasure hunter companies are. They are coming here to countries like Mozambique and Indonesia with proposals for partnerships of exploiting the wrecks. And this is something that must be finished. So,
Ricardo, there are two more questions. The first one is from Michaela. Can you explain more about the fate of the Espadadre? Did you excavate it again after the looting activities? How is the condition of the hull? And are there any leftovers after the company?
Regarding this Espadarte, we have not made any intrusive intervention. We have not made any excavation. We are only monitoring the wreck with photogrammetry. We regularly monitoring the wreck. The wreck has been very much disturbed, as I have told, in 2000, 2001, 2003, around those years, have been very much disturbed by this commercial company, treasure hunter company, and they have very much spoiled the wreck, even the collection. I think they have taken this mint collection, but these were not only the cargo of the ship. I have discovered this wreck in '94 myself, and there was enormous amount of martaban jars on the surface, and I have not done any excavation there. And after these treasure hunters came, 3 years after I discovered the wreck, I was beginning with my colleagues here in Mozambique and some colleagues from United States to study the wreck, but they have gone themselves to spoil the wreck and salvage the wreck. And I don't know where is the collection that they have taken, what objects they have taken, but what I want to mention is that there is still a lot there. Now the most part of the hull is still there, and I have been noticing that there is still a lot of objects from the cargo that can still be, there is a lot of information there, and now we are trying to study what is the best strategy to protect, study that wreck, but we don't want to be in a hurry on that, you know, create the conditions, yes.
One more question. Is recreational diving allowed in historical wrecks?
Sorry?
Recreational diving is possible in historical wrecks. Question from Mina.
Yeah, what happens here? These are a lot of wrecks. It's not only these ones that I have shown. There are a lot. It's in fact very interesting for diving, but this is something that must be. We are also thinking and studying the possibility to make this a tourist attraction, and it must. We are still trying to organize in a way that afterwards it don't bring more disturbance to the wrecks, you know, and this must be linked with the strengthening of the capacities of the local capacity of this center, Kairim Center, and the local archaeologists with conditions to guide, make tourist operations guided tourists, and it's something that is still under study. But sometimes we take already some people, people that come here with interest in. We are already taking some people for diving, but and show the wrecks in an experimental way for a future development of this kind of tourist activity.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. It was excellent presentation and very nice answers. This is the end of the webinar, but for last words, I would like to invite Chris. Yes, Chris.
Thank you, Hakan. Where do I start? Because Ricardo, that was amazing. And thank you so much for bringing to our attention and reminding us of the problems we still face in protecting UCH around the world. And of course, Diego did the same thing, you know, under threat from development. Fortunately, in that case, there was opportunity for his team to work and save, either by record or by extraction, amazing parts of, you know, the maritime history. And I think what jumped out for me is that we had Diego talking about 18th, 19th, 20th century sites, and we had Ricardo talking about 15th, 16th, and 17th century sites, all involved in global expansion, globalization. And it just showed me or reminded me that the tremendous activity, maritime activity, in all of those centuries. And of course, I think Ricardo made me feel a little better by saying there's still much on the seabed and still much information and research to be done. And I think we should close like that on an optimistic note, that there is more to be done, more to be saved, and in all our cases, we can move forward. Thank you, Hakan.
Perfect. Dear colleagues, this is the end of the webinar, and it was great to see all of you, and we wish to see you 1 month later to 8th ICOMOS ICUC webinar. Have a good day, have a good afternoon, have a good night. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for attending us.
Thank you. Thank you,
Brilliant.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take
Thank
care.
you.